What's going on, everyone? It is AJ, and I'm here with Greg Marshall from Fit Marketing. What's going on?
Hey, how we doing?
Doing good, doing good. So I know we talked just a few minutes ago, and we wanted to talk to some of those business owners out there today who have service-based businesses. They need lead generation, but what are some of the flaws that we see right out the gates that people, in this situation or scenario have?
I mean, one of the biggest flaws first is how they're beginning to look at lead generation as a whole. So one point that I usually make to business owners that kind of, I guess, hits them right in the heart is when I say they're spending too much time on, I need to get more and new leads, and they're not necessarily thinking about, okay, once we get you a lead, what are you doing with it? Right? Do you have effective follow-up systems? Do you have an effective sales system? Like typically I'll ask them, walk us through how you convert that lead, because that's usually where I think people always think they need more leads, more leads, more leads, but they're not doing anything with the leads that they get, and they're consistently starting over.
That makes sense. And what is our process? So we advertise to get our clients. What is our process for lead generation, and how long does it take for someone to sign up? Like they come in as a lead, how long does it take until they actually sign up as a client with us?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some clients that take 6, 7, 8 months. I've had clients take a year, and these are leads that have come into our ecosystem because we go back into our CRM and I take a look at the first time they've entered and then how many emails. Some of them have to see 24, 30, 40 emails before they actually convert. And when we lead generate, we follow with the fortunes are in the follow-up. So our main focus is on the follow-up process more so than the actual lead generation process, because it does us no good to get all these leads and then never follow up. So we like to use ad to lead capture, to retargeting, to then giving them more content, to email marketing, to text message marketing, and we just keep repeating that. And essentially, we view the lead generation cycle as like we're building a relationship with actual people. And if you think about a relationship, it takes a lot longer to develop a strong relationship than just the one or two touch points.
It's funny because we have people that we've signed up or that, I've talked to and have signed up, and they literally open 30 emails from us. And when I get on a call, they're like, yeah, I read all your guys' emails. I see the videos that you guys do, and I figured now was the time to do it. But they took 8, 9 months to sign up. And so I think that's the big miss that a lot of service-based businesses have, is they're not actually getting those touch points where the client actually feels like they know them, like them, or trust them.
Here's a question I'm curious to hear your answer. So, why do you think most service-based businesses, um, why do you think they can't execute on that part when it comes to staying consistent and following up with the lead and having the mindset of investing for the future?
I think that the biggest challenge that I see business owners have is it's kind of like weight loss, right? The hardest part of weight loss is not what you do, it's what you don't do. And it's like your focus. If you just ate better, you would lose weight, right? That's like the number one key component. And then the exercise helps to, tone and whatever that body. It's the same thing with business. It's like if you just followed up with your leads and consistently gave value, you would see that come to fruition and you would see these exponential growths in your business. But everybody wants the quick fix, so they just think more leads, more leads, more leads. But the reality is, most people. I have a funny story. I used to work at a cell phone store, and I had a guy named Bob that came in. I remember the day he came in because he was a unique guy. Had on really tight jeans, some cowboy boots, a army hat, and a Bluetooth headset on. And Bob came in, and he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying this Galaxy phone over here." So I went over. I spent about 30 minutes with Bob. Bob says, all right, I'll be back. Bob came in 5 more times to think about it before he finally made the decision to switch over from his old cell phone provider to us and buy the new phone and all this stuff. But Bob was the most loyal customer ever, but it took him all those times to actually buy. And I think that's the hard thing. But those are your best customers if you actually have the follow up. So that's what I think needs to be implemented.
One of the trends that I see, anytime we get like a new client that's looking to generate more leads and get sales, this isn't their first attempt, right? They've either tried to do it on their own, they've worked with maybe another agency or two or a random freelancer. And so they have proactively tried different things. And in my mind, when I go into their ad accounts and kind of take a look at everything they've done, I always think, where would they be if they just stayed consistent with whatever thing they did when they first started? Because what it feels like is when you look into their account, you can see all these different things that they've tried, but they've never put all the pieces together and stay consistent. Almost all of the campaigns that I see, they'll be like 3-day tests, 2-day tests, a couple of days, no real money spent on the campaigns to like let it develop. And so a tip or something that I would recommend is, let's say you're selling real estate. You got to think someone's going to spend a minimum $300,000-$400,000 with you. They're not going to just want one touch point, and they're not just going to like make a decision, instantly. Or if you're selling something that's higher price point, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month, or even one time, your sales cycle is not going to be 3 days. Right. And so you have to align your marketing efforts, and essentially you need to create a follow up sequence that mirrors how long it takes someone to actually buy. So let's say you have a 90-day cycle, 180-day cycle. You have to have a follow up system that does that. And you have to have the mindset of like, I can't view the lead that I get today as to get a sale today or tomorrow, unless you're selling very low ticket, $50 order value type things. But most service based businesses are not doing that. They're selling a much higher ticket. And you can make the argument, the higher the ticket, the longer the follow up and the more trust you need to build. So that would be my tip for businesses that are trying to get more leads is, you can get more leads all day. It's, are you going to follow up with them for the necessary amount of time that their sales cycle actually is?
It's amazing because I remember I had a sales manager when I started in my outside sales career, and one of the things he told me, he was the number one sales rep at Cintas, which is like a pretty big company. They do all kinds of stuff. And one of the things he said is, what you do today, you're not going to see the fruits of that labor for 3 to 4 months. So he said, that's how I want you to think. Whatever sales efforts you're doing today, you're not going to see a dollar from them for 3 or 4 months. And I think if business owners switch the way that they thought about marketing and lead generation and advertising to realizing that if you it's not obviously you want the low hanging fruit and the easy wins, but it's not about just getting a getting a lead and moving as quickly as possible. It's about, how can I build a system that you always say, Greg, how can I build a system that can last forever, that we never have to change? We switch out the ads, we switch out the messaging and the offers, but the system stays the same. And I think that's a big opportunity that a lot of people have.
Well, let's talk about, okay, I feel like, just, we come from the fitness space, so we know how this works. I feel like generally everyone knows logically this is how you should think, right? But really the core problem is they're driven by fear that this isn't going to work out for me, right? My business is different. We make that joke all the time. And I think some tips to really think about, okay, when you're doing your campaigns, usually the reason why people can't stick to it is either, number one, they're too aggressive up front, and so they burn cash too quickly, right? And so when you start burning cash too quickly, your mind equally goes into like survival mode and says, I need to hurry up and get that money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not the right mindset for long-term sustainability, right? So that's the equivalent of a crash diet. I'm going to go from eating 3,000 calories a day to 500. Well, that's such a shock to the system that it's unsustainable. right? The second thing, the second fear is the relationship with money and how they view money. So something that helped me get better with investing into lead generation, marketing, advertising is switching your mindset to an abundant mindset. So typically, people can have an abundant mindset in many areas of their life. In marketing, it really tests if you believe in abundance, because you're literally spending money, and spending money will make you feel a specific way. It puts you. It's. I think our natural instinct is survival. So you're thinking resources are going out. I think at a very basic level, you think you're dying if you're like putting these dollars out, right? And nothing's coming back immediately. You're essentially going to go into panic mode. And what I recommend, here's a drill that I recommend, and if anyone follows this, it will work. And I don't want to say guarantee, but pretty close. What you have to do is just like exercise, pick a budget that is like moderate, something that's slightly stretching, but not too much to where you're literally panicking and looking at it all the time. And what you do is you train yourself to be willing to spend and invest that money back into your business to build a system. So the way it'll work is, let's say you, whatever that number is, $5 a day, right? You put $5 a day and you go ahead and let that run for a week or two. And then once you notice that like your business didn't go under, you go to $10 a day. And then you go to 15 and 20 and you slowly build it up. When you do it that way with the intent of I'm going to do this long term, you have a tendency to what I like to call build up your marketing muscle. So you're slowly strengthening your marketing muscle by just doing a little bit more at a time instead of trying to go 0 to 100, because what that'll do is it'll cause marketing injury, right? You're going to get hurt doing things too aggressively, too fast. So that's my tip to try to help overcome that fear, because what you need to prove to yourself is that your business is not going to go under. Everything is not going to collapse when you're investing in lead generation. In fact, the opposite will happen. But this mental game of if you get in a scarcity mindset will tend to make you shrink everything. And that's exactly what prevents you from building the system you need.
Yeah, we keep coming back to the gym analogy, but it's like most people quit their New Year's resolutions after 14 days or after 2 weeks, right? And they never actually get to the point where it becomes, a habit and something that's effective. And I think it's the same part of the brain, the same part of the mind that, we want instant gratification. So, maybe one of the ways that people can play tricks on themselves is have instant gratification be something different, right? Because it's going to be a lag between when you start and when you actually see the results. So maybe you got to find a way to get the results to be something, different that you can measure in terms of performance so you can stay motivated to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, is having kind of like smaller wins along the way. Because one thing that really prevents success in any capacity, no matter what you're doing, right? Whether it's going to school, building a business, a relationship, one thing that will prevent success in that arena is going to be ourselves and our own limited thinking, our own way of thinking. And if we go into it with the mindset of like, it's all or nothing, it has to work, there's a secret treasure out there, there's a secret hack or trick that will get me from where I am today, which is frustrated and not knowing how to grow my business, to just, to Disneyland essentially. It just doesn't exist. It's more about, if you want to get there, your mindset just has to be, I'm going to take these little steps and I'm going to do it forever. And it never ends. Like, marketing is a part of your business structure, right? It needs to always be happening. It can't start and stop, or we kind of do it and then I fell off. We have to build systems that protect the business owner from themselves. right? And I use this in my own business, right? Where I have systems in place because I already know if I don't have these systems in place, certain things will not get done, right? And so a lot of times you just have to admit, like, okay, I am a serial start and stopper. I think of a marketing idea, I think it's cool, then I stop it. And then I restart over and over again, never allowing any momentum to really be built. And that's what causes, I think, a lot of challenges in the marketing space when it comes to business owners trying to grow is they keep starting and stopping, just like a diet. They start a new diet, they stop it. Then they don't do anything for 2, 3 months, they start again. And they keep doing that versus doing a less extreme activity and just slowly building up and making it a habit. You'll see much greater results.
I think one thing that I think people could do is actually think about a real life person and how they buy. So, for example, if I wanted to sell to myself, I would think about how I buy and how long it takes me to make certain decisions and all the things that I go through and comparing, this type versus that type and trying to figure out what the right thing is. So, that's something that a lot of individuals, like, a lot of these things are kindergarten in some ways, right? It's like, hey, who do you want to sell to? How do they buy? How do they want to buy? How do they want to be sold to? And do that. But a lot of times we don't take the time to actually stop and do that. And so, one of the things that Greg and I do is Greg will ask me questions or I'll ask Greg questions. And those questions will be like, what are the biggest pain points that they're facing? Why do you think that they're scared to move forward? What do they actually want? And as we play this kind of game, we come up with great messaging and great campaigns that work. But unless you actually go back to like vanilla and start, and we've been doing this for a long time, sales and
Yeah.
marketing combined, a lot of years,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we still do it. So
Yeah. And I think, and it always comes back to the fundamentals, right? Not getting too fancy with what we're doing. It's going back to, you know, what does the customer want? What do they need? What can we provide? And a key point is don't only think about what you want to sell. Okay. That's a big challenge, I believe, because of course, every business wants to sell. Hey, I have this VIP package and it's $800,000 for an individual, and I want nothing but that, right? But the problem is, does the market want that, right? Are your customers saying they want that? Because if you try to like shove a solution down someone's throat, but they're not really interested, you're not going to get the conversions that you want, no matter how great you think you are, or no matter how hard you try. So you have to have a level of active listening, right? Listening to the market, listening to the customer. What do they keep saying they're struggling with? And why do they keep struggling with? And how do we resolve that issue, right? That's what this is all about, is understanding who it is you're actually talking to and how to solve their problem. I think if you stay there, just like when I used to teach the sales to people who claim they couldn't sell, I said, you want the fastest hack possible? Just think about, how can I help the person sitting in front of me? That's it. Just think, if you think like that, you will sell more automatically. That's the hack. And it's because you need to understand and put yourself in the shoes of the customer and say, when they tell me this, what are they really saying? Right? And go deep on it. And when you do that, you make stronger marketing messages, your sales will go up, and everything seems a lot easier. And that's because you're in congruence with who you're speaking and talking to versus playing the resistance game of like, well, my customers want this, but I don't want to sell them that. I want to sell them this. And so you're just like pushing against each other instead of making it nice and easy and saying, this is what they want, we'll give it to them. Right? And you just keep doing it. So that's a challenge that I think if business owners also look at what they're providing, they need to be thinking about, what are my customers and the market saying, so that I can react to them and give them what they need, instead of just force feeding them something that I or the business owner wants to sell.
that's a great point, and you just reminded me of something. A lot of times when you're a business owner and you're an expert in whatever it is that you're in, right? So if you're in real estate, if you have, a flooring company, garage, whatever it is, you're an expert in that thing. And a lot of times the people that you're selling to don't know anything about it. They're uneducated. And so sometimes I think what happens is when we're the expert in the space, we go out and we talk to other people like they're the expert in the space. And then we have challenges because we're trying to sell them based on how cool we think it is instead of how it's going to solve their problems, make their life easier, give them a great result, all the things that they actually want. And so I think one of the tips that I would say is not to treat your customers like they're dumb, but treat them like they're just uneducated in what it is that you do. And nobody's going to be offended if you're a, expert in hormone therapy and you talk to people as if they're 12 years old about it, because they want to understand at a basic level. And if they happen to have more additional knowledge, that's okay, because they're still going to be able to relate it to what they already know. So sometimes making things simpler is the solution, because maybe people do want what you have to offer, but you're not describing it in a way that shows them that they actually want it.
Yep. No, that's also a great point, because it's easy to talk in your industry jargon or lingo, and and I've caught myself doing this, and then you got to take a step back, because you're like, if I'm speaking to a person that wants help, they don't understand what CPM and CTR and ROAS and I mean, they do, but not in those terms, like the way they're being described, right? So you want to be able to simplify it by saying, okay, what this means is this. And you know this, AJ, because of all the calls we have. I like to speak in a lot of analogies, right? Yeah, and because I think it simplifies. I'm taking something that is perceived as complex to an individual who hasn't heard it before, and then just simplifying it so they know exactly what it means. So they're like, "Oh yeah, let's make this decision." And I think when you're speaking to your customers, if you want to educate them, this also goes into being able to not need to feel like you're super above the customer as well, right? I think sometimes it's easy to be like, well, I'm the expert in this, and you can start to talk over the client or at the client versus with the client, right? And when you speak like that, you could be turning them off with like, okay, they're speaking so high level, so above that I don't know if I'm even qualified to work with this person. It's very easy. In fact, I'm thinking of a customer right now that has said that. He said his biggest challenge is when people will reach out to him, their perception of him is he uses the phrase that they think he eats his young. Like that he's like this guy that's just like a straight, like I take no BS, and he's actually not like that. But it's because if you speak too high or they view in a certain level, it's you have to come down to the customer's level and see them eye to eye. Just like when you're talking with kids, it's better to get on their level and speak so they can understand, versus if you're talking down to them, it's now more of an intimidation, right?
Hmm.
And you can actually make someone who is highly qualified to work with you feel disqualified, that they can't work with you, even if they have the budget, the right mindset, the right work ethic. If you're speaking down to them, you could literally make them feel like, oh, maybe I need to go another direction, because like it might be too elite for me, or it might, they might not be a good fit. So also be careful of that. That's why you want to think about speaking with the client. You're having a conversation with them, not at them or down to them. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, communication skills extremely important. And sometimes, okay, another question for you. There are a lot of business owners out there. Let's say they have a small team, but they do all the sales themselves, but they're not necessarily the best salesperson in the world, right? They're a good technician. They're good at doing the thing, but they struggle to sell. So what would you say to someone like that who wants to invest in lead generation? They know they need more leads, but of every 20 qualified leads, they're only going to close one of those people. What would you What advice would you give to someone like that?
Well, there's two different, pieces of advice I'll give. Number one, invest back into yourself on how to sell better. Hire a sales trainer or a sales coach or read books to address that issue, right? And we can all get better with that. I remember in my journey, in the very early stages, I read sales books every single day for years to upgrade my skills, right? Because I knew I have to get better at this if I want to succeed. And it's almost like you have to be willing to admit to yourself. Some people call it like remove your ego or whatever, but you have to admit to yourself, I do not have nothing but strengths. I have weaknesses and holes in my game and I need to fix them. I need to get better and improve at those areas. So you have to look at that and go, if you're getting 100 leads, but you're not closing, that just means you haven't gotten the skill set to where you need it to be in order to make it successful. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a bad business person, none of that. It's just a certain skill set. The second thing would be if you have no desire to do that, hire a salesperson who does, right? And it could be commission based, or you can do a draw plus commission. There's different ways to get creative to get them on your team, but just hire someone that's better at sales than you are. But here's the thing, you have to do something, right? And I'm saying you have to do something. This is not a problem that hiring a new marketing agency will suddenly fix, or using the newest software will suddenly fix. It's none of that's going to fix it. You have to address the actual problem head on. So if you're getting leads or you get leads but you get no sales, you have to take a strong look in the mirror and say, am I as good in sales as I need to be to grow to the level that I want? And if the answer is no, that is okay. Just take the necessary steps to get to the level that you need to be.
I think that's brilliant advice. And the last two things that you've said, the last two segments reminded me of two things, or one thing actually. So when you're selling to somebody, a lot of times we think that we just need to get them to be sold on our product or service, right? So we think that by convincing them that they need social media advertising, that's enough to actually make them take an action. But one of the things that people have is an internal fear, right? And that internal fear is, okay, it works for you, but like Greg said earlier, my business is different, or this isn't going to work for me because whatever million excuses they have, if you don't overcome that, they're never going to buy. But then a lot of times there's actually a third one. And the third one is something external. This could be maybe their wife, maybe the guy the business owner is a man and his wife does all of the bookkeeping and the finances. And so he has to run this by his wife and he has to get her buy-in. She doesn't run the business, but she does the bookkeeping and the finances. So she needs to be sold on it too. Or maybe it's something, and that's an actual real situation that I came across. Maybe it's something where they are planning on something and they have a certain budget and they need to take away from this other budget in order to give to this budget. And that's the only way they're going to be able to do it. So I think one of the things that I would say to become a better salesperson is just try to, like, almost like a kid, try to find out what the real reasons are, what they really want, what the real reasons they're going to be able to make a decision, or that are going to help them make a decision are, and then just, show whether or not you can actually help them. Because I think the biggest misconception about sales is it's convincing someone to do something that they may or may not want to do. But really, I think sales is more about giving people permission to say yes to the thing that they actually want. So I think when you switch how you think about it,
Well, I would
it can
actually
help
say
you
too,
become a better
one of the
salesperson, even if you're not
biggest,
a extroverted,
like when you think
business
about
owner.
elite level of selling, usually comes from being able to creatively solve problems. That's typically what I think is elite level selling, right? Is you have to be able to, there's different stages of selling, right? You use the hack of, how can I help this person? That's to me the ultimate hack, right? But then when you start getting to the level of creative problem solving together, keyword together, when you're selling and you're getting leads, you have to be in this together. It's not me versus you. It's not, I'm going to close you. I'm going to persuade you to do what I want you to do. It's none of that. What it is we are trying to solve a problem together. And elite level selling is there is a way to solve this. It's the open mindedness of thinking there is a way to solve this challenge that you have. And if we think about it together hard enough and we're open minded enough to try things, we can crack the code of whatever that challenge that you're having is. Right. And that's what I think elite level selling is. And if you notice, I'm not saying hard close somebody or there's some magical script that's somehow going to get them to do what you want. I'm saying this needs to be a partnership, a creative problem solving partnership between you and the customer or customers in order for them to feel the belief that, okay, this person is actually trying literally on the spot, trying to solve my problem right here. And the level of commitment that they have to solving this problem is why I want to buy from this person, right? That's the difference. And anyone who doesn't like to sell or feels like they're not a good salesman, usually it's because they have the belief that they've been taught by someone else that you should be embarrassed to be a salesperson. You should be ashamed of going out and selling or promoting whatever it is, or that somehow what you're doing is wrong or like it's not moral, or that you're just tricking people into doing stuff. And it's none of that. And those exact beliefs are the reason why when you're getting leads, you're not selling them. It's because that is what's actually holding you back, not necessarily your product or your service.
What's incredible is that if someone wanted to truly think about what's the fastest way I could double my revenue, double my sales, well, the fastest and easiest way is double the number of leads that you sign up. you
Yep.
know, because
That's
if you don't have to spend any more money, you don't have to, do anything different. Just figure out a way to get more of the people that raise their hand and say I'm interested to actually take the action, and that's the fastest, quickest hack that you can
yep.
actually do. So I think that that's a big thing is for business owners to understand that marketing isn't magic, right?
Mm.
It's every once in a while you get a campaign that does something incredible, but for the most part it's system. It's going to the gym every day, it's eating healthy, it's
Yep.
it's going to sleep, getting sleep, and all those things, and that's what makes someone an elite level performer. And it's the same thing for your business.
I think you're spot on as far as that's what you just have to do. You got to view it that way. Marketing isn't magic, no matter how many marketers try to tell you that it is, which is part of the problem, right? Is um, the marketing that's out there is not really realistic marketing, right? So it's they take a certain situation that's a unicorn and they make it sound like that will happen for everyone, right? Where they're like, yeah, how I went from 0 to 75 million in 6 months doing this, right? And you're like, yeah, and we're definitely, as marketers, we're like, you should promote that. You should let people know that you've gotten those great results, but you should also let them know that this is kind of a unique scenario, right? Like this is what happens if all the stars align perfectly and you execute all the fundamentals and you have the perfect offer and you have the perfect targeting and you have the perfect landing page and you have everything is perfect. That can happen, but it doesn't always happen like that, or at least that quickly, right? It usually requires a lot of discipline of looking at breaking each step down to solving one problem at a time. So maybe it's you get leads, but then they don't respond. So then you're not getting conversions. Well, then your next challenge is how do I get them to respond? Right. But that can also lead into, well, how do I get them to respond? Do I focus on the targeting? Is my messaging attracting the wrong person? Are my emails not getting delivered? Are my text messages not getting to them? Do they not believe me? Like, so then you have to go through all that and test all that. And so, one of the things that I like to tell clients when they talk with us is I say, you know what we are? We're glorified testers, and we do a lot of the grunt work that you don't want to do, right? And we
Yep.
say, We're in there clicking the buttons. We're looking at the numbers. We're checking to see if this works. We're holding you accountable to make sure that you're actually invested in your business as much as we are. And that's how that's how we view it. But that's what I tell clients is we're glorified testers, and we are doing more of the grunt work that is challenging when you're a busy business owner.
Yeah, and I think one thing that business owners need to understand when you're working with a marketing agency is it should almost feel like a partnership. And I'll give you an example. So we have a client in the health space, and we were generating a ton of leads, 30, 40 leads a month, but he was only getting one, maybe two people signed up. And he was like, "Hey, AJ, I know that this system is working for someone else in my same industry that we also do ads for." He's like, how come they're able, he's like, how come they're able to get 20 people signed up and we're only able to get one or two? And so I took a look at their whole process. What does your follow-up look like? When are you following up with the leads? What are you saying? All those things. And I realized that there were all these other gaps in their process. And so I provided them with a script. I provided them with the text messages to send out, all these different elements, these components that are needed. And now they're getting better results. But without the second half of it, you're not going to get the results. And so I think that's an important thing to realize is that some people refer to people that they hire as vendors, right?
Yeah.
Really, you want to look at the people that you're working with as partners. And if you
Yep.
can't view them as a partner, and if they're just a vendor, then maybe you should look somewhere else because you need people that are in alignment with your end goal, with what you actually
Yep.
want in your business.
It's funny that you say that. It reminds me of, the biggest fear that I think we all have is this is where I think people get focused on new leads is actually a deeper psychological issue than what anyone realizes. Okay. And let me explain. If you're getting new leads, it's always a new person, right? It's new name, new number, new email, all that. That's exciting. But it also is an avoidance tactic. Okay? The avoidance tactic is deep down, most people do not want to be considered annoying or overly in front of a customer. So that's why there's so much resistance to following up and reaching back out to someone who maybe said no 2 times ago and doing that over and over again. It's because internally we believe that that's bad, right? That you shouldn't. Not only do we have challenges to ask, but we have more challenges to now we're asking people to ask more, right? And so you can see that's not congruent with who they are, what they've been taught as, being a good person, right? Is you should number one, you shouldn't ask. And on top of it, you're asking and you're telling me to ask 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And so that's usually an avoidance tactic, and which is why it's more attractive to keep getting new leads because you get to avoid the discomfort internally of like, oh, I have to follow up with this person. They told me no last week, and now I'm going to be perceived in this way. And I have a deep belief that that is what is holding a lot of people back, especially in the lead generation, is they don't want to follow up because they don't want to seem like needy or wanting to, being a pest or just constantly being on top of them. But most people underestimate how much you actually need to reach back out to get anyone to take action. Because to make the assumption that your leads are just at home thinking about you would be massively arrogant because they're not thinking about you. In fact, they forgot about you even though they just filled out the form 5 minutes ago. They already forgot about you. So you have to stay in front of them. And that level, when I've had consultations with clients that usually are maybe, let's say they're influencers or people that are perceived as, and they are high value, but people that are perceived as like, oh, this is an influencer. They would never do this. Internally, they struggle with follow up because they're like, oh, well, I shouldn't have to follow up. I should just be able to put things out there and then get the result that I want because of who I am, right? Which is a very bad belief because the market doesn't care. right? The market is going to behave the way they want. Guess what? Someone else is following up with that person, and they're going to end up getting the business because they're okay to, once again, remove their ego to say, like, hey, I'm here to serve this person, not to pump me up. Right. And so I think when you go into the deep psychological reason of why I think lead generation doesn't work for a lot of businesses, it's because of that. They don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to send that text. They don't want to send that email to the person who said no 2 or 3 times before. But the crazy part, I remember reading some stat that says the average amount of times that someone says no before they say yes in a sales environment, I think it was like 7 or 9 times. But the average follow up that a salesperson does is 1. So you can see, if you want to basically win against like your perceived competition, all you have to do is follow up 2 or more times and you'll win, especially if you're in the same market, because the average salesperson is only following 1 time.
Yeah. And it reminded me of a story that we had where we had a client, a while back, and generated a ton of leads. And, we got those messages, hey, these leads aren't good. These leads, they're not answering the phone. They're fake numbers.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
So we got all those messages. And so one day we jumped on a Zoom and picked up the phone and literally started calling the leads. And the first person we called, they were like, yeah, I'm busy right now, but call me back. And the second one, no answer. The third one answered the phone. The fourth one, we actually booked an appointment. And then we called our client and said, hey, you got an appointment for tomorrow at this time. Make sure to call the lady. So of the 4 or 5 leads we called, we got in contact with 3 of them. We booked one appointment. And, one of them we just called to see if the number was real and hung up. So, we had a pretty good success rate. But if you're not ever actually taking those actions, you're never going to know. So if you don't like to do it as the business owner, then just hire someone to do it, and
Yep.
it reminds me of a good phrase that I heard from a buddy of mine years ago. So he walked in and I just met the guy and we're talking, and he tells me this analogy. He says, if I have $1 and I have my hand closed, nobody can take my dollar, but I can't accept any more dollars. But if I opened up my hand, yeah, people can take parts of my dollar, but I can also accept way more. And so I think sometimes you talked about that scarcity mindset versus abundance. As a business owner, sometimes opening up your hand and, being willing to pay other people or, invest in other people well is what's going to give you exponential returns, on your efforts and on your investment versus just trying to do everything yourself and keeping that fist closed. So that's another thing that I would say that can help.
That's a good point, because one of the things I would like to challenge each business owner, because this is a challenge that I have to do with myself consistently too. This is a never-ending game. That's the thing. We're all in this together. It's a never-ending game. One of the challenges I'd like to propose out there is usually the response that you're going to get when you tell a business owner, well, if you're not good at it, just hire someone to do it. The response is going to be, yeah, but I can't afford that. Or, yeah, I can't do that. Or whatever they're going to say. I challenge you to actually say, have I thought through this enough to figure out a way to afford it? Right? The lazy answer is I can't afford it. I've had to go through this many, many times. The lazy answer is I can't afford it. The more proactive answer is, how can I afford this? What way could I get whatever it is that I need to happen? Right? Because once again, it goes back to your level of commitment. Okay, so if you have a business, if I guarantee I can ask any business owner, how committed are you to growing your business? Extremely committed. Okay, so then just do this. Find someone who can do that for you. Well, I can't do that because I can't afford it. To me, that's not really commitment. To me, that's just like, I'm only going to do what's easiest, right? Or most convenient. I'm not going to get out of that comfort zone. I've had to go through this many, many times, where I have to look in the mirror and honestly say, am I doing everything that I can in order to get to the goal that I'm saying I want? And guess what? Usually the answer is no, right? Like it's, well, I'm doing these things, but I haven't taken this risk or I haven't tried this. And so that's my challenge to all you business owners out there that are trying to grow your business and you're trying to get more leads and close those leads is legitimately look in the mirror and ask yourself, if you think you can't afford to bring someone on or they can't do it, if that is just your way of being non-committal to your own business, or if you're committed, you will find a way to get this person. It just takes creative thinking. But once again, it goes back to you just have to be committed. If your business means a lot to you, you just have to commit to it and just go, I will find a way. It might be a much different way than maybe everyone else would do it, but it's a way, and it's you taking action. And guess what? When you don't actually invest in what you're doing, right? So meaning, yeah, I can't afford that. You're actually, so what you don't realize is you're lowering your self-esteem and your confidence in yourself by doing that. Because internally, deep down, this used to be a joke between a friend and I. We used to give each other a hard time with this, but it's true. You can tell me whatever you want, but deep down, you can't look in the mirror. Internally, you're not doing everything possible. So you can tell me all day, I'm committed, I'm this, I'm that. But deep down, you can look in the mirror and go, yeah, I don't know. So every time you say answers like, well, I can't do this, or that's not possible, or whatever, you're actually lowering your self-esteem. And what that's going to do is eventually you keep doing that. That's where you run into the business owners that have that very kind of negative outlook on marketing agencies, on employees, on accountants, on vendors, on the market. They view everything negative. And it's because their self-esteem has been dropped so low because they themselves have not committed and invested the way they should.
Yeah, and it's almost just being more creative. When you're open to the possibilities, you'll find a way. And I can tell you that there's a lot of salespeople out there who just enjoy selling, right? And
Yep.
they enjoy talking to people and they enjoy the conversations and the game of selling. And so if you really have, a great service that you can provide, but you struggle, or your team, it's a family business and none of you guys are really great at selling, do not be scared to bring in someone, because people for the right opportunity, people will come in and take a risk on you and say, hey, I'll sell 100% commission or whatever it is. You got to treat them well, you got to do all those things, but that those are opportunities that you can figure out really easily, and there are talented people out there that would do it in a heartbeat, but you just got to be willing to look for new avenues.
Well, and that once again, that just goes straight back to the commitment to your business. Are you committed to solving the problems? Are you committed to looking at new or different ways? And that's something over time I feel like I've also had to work on. I'm saying this not from the guru pedestal. Okay? I'm saying this from I'm in the same game as you. And I have run into this multiple times and I'm going to run into it again. And it's always going to, every stage that you get to, it's always going to come back, but just in a different way. And you have to be able to go, all right, I say that I want to reach these goals. Am I doing everything that I need to do in order to get it? And that's why one of my favorite things to do is to be around people that are doing more, right? That are at a higher level, because it'll automatically make you challenge yourself. And so maybe one thing that you can do as a business owner, especially if you're trying to get more leads and more sales, go surround yourself with someone that also is in the service-based business that has a ton of leads and always seems like, man, sales are always great for them. And just be around them and start to absorb their belief patterns. What you'll find is their belief patterns are deeper and bigger than what yours are at the moment is, right? You'll notice they'll view something that you think, and I've had this happen a lot of times too. I'll talk to someone who's doing way above and beyond what I'm doing, and I'll tell them a problem that to me feels very huge. And they'll just say, yeah, just do this. And they just say it in a tone of voice of like, yeah, that's the smallest problem I think I've ever heard. And I'm thinking it's the biggest problem, right? And that just demonstrates the amount of growth that is necessary to get to those levels. It's not, it's more their mindset and being able to push through that more than anything. A lot of times it's not that another business has way better ideas or they're operated way better. It's usually the mindset of I'm willing to go through some of these challenges, learn from them, grow from them, and get better. And just enjoy the journey as you're going through versus the a bad habit I used to have in the past was I would have this challenge and feel like it's the biggest challenge in the world and it's impossible to overcome. And I would just sit there and be paralyzed by the thought of trying to overcome this challenge. Like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so you start asking the wrong question, right? I can't believe this is going. Why is this happening? That's the wrong question, right? The right question is who's already overcome this, and let me talk to that person and just tell them the issue and tell them what should I do here, right? How did you solve the problem? And I still remember talking to my mentor during a very challenging time and just asking him, have you ever gone through this? And then he proceeded to tell me a problem that was 10 times larger than the problem I was currently going through. And I felt like, quit your complaining, Greg. Just get it done. Just solve the problem. This is not a big problem. So I kind of go on that rant to just say, you got to be committed. You got to be invested. The other thing you have to do is do not believe you have all the answers, right? Having more brains around you, asking questions, asking for help is the fast track to making your lead generation efforts work, your business to grow, and to actually go to where you want to be. Because if you don't do any of that and you just try to, like your analogy, just squeeze really tight and hold on to this one thing and I'm right and I'm always right and everyone else out there, is wrong and they don't know what my business is about, you're gonna stay like that. And you're not going to be able to grow because you're too committed and invested in being right, not in getting it right.
Powerful. Anything else that we would say to as we wrap this one up that we'd like to leave the people watching with?
I would just say challenge yourself to change your mindset because as much as it sounds like airy fairy, like mindset, how does that actually work? None of the tactics that you ever read about or try will ever work for you if you don't fix your mindset. And I say that with the utmost confidence. If you still have a scarcity, small, negative thinking mindset, I could give you the next $1 billion idea, and you wouldn't know what to do with it because you're too focused on the wrong thing.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, let's go ahead and end this one, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one.
See you guys.